Well, I told you that this segment was going to be coming at some point, and now it's here. We got to start talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. And with the Sooners being off on Saturday, not a better time to slide a segment in here than right now. So if you're not here for Thunder content, I get it. Just fast forward for the next 12 to 15 minutes, and we're back to Sooner Talk after this segment. But unfortunately, when I get the opportunity to record about the Thunder, it's coming off of a 121-119 loss in Portland. And it really wasn't dramatic just because of the outcome. I think you look at what this loss revealed, if you're a Thunder fan. This was their first loss of the season. Sure, but I think more importantly, it was a reminder that even championship teams can lose their edge if they let their discipline slip. And what I want to do, just take a few minutes and let's break down what went wrong, what still went right, and what this game means for the Thunder's trajectory throughout the rest of the season. So let's start with the narrative here. The Thunder, they open up in Portland, they come out roaring, race to a 41-21 first quarter lead, and everything just looked seamless. Ball movement was there, transition baskets were there, defensive intensity was there. They looked like the team that was built to dominate on the road in their conference. But then they begin to unravel. The Trailblazers rally from a 22-point hole to win 121-119. And the key stat here is after the first quarter, Oklahoma City was outscored 100-78. And you typically don't see that from a defending champion who still is a contender. So what changed? Because I think most of us will agree that this is the best team in the league. But here's a few things you can look at. First of all, you look at all five starters, right? All five Thunder starters, and yes, they were shorthanded. We'll get into that. All five Thunder starters had at least 3 fouls. So that opens the door for Portland. That opens it wide for Portland. The Blazers got to the line consistently, and they kept their momentum. And Oklahoma plays an aggressive form of defense, but it turned into undisciplined fouling. I think you also have to look at transition and rhythm. The Thunder's first quarter was full of fast break points. They forced turnovers, they made easy baskets, but after that, the transition game just dried up. In the second quarter, they added very few fast break points, and they were kind of punished for it. And I think something that leads to that is maybe a little bit of fatigue and depth, right? So here's what I said we'd come to. The Thunder were missing Chet Holmgren, Lou Dort, and Alex Caruso. They all set this game out. So the cupboard wasn't fully stocked, and Portland took advantage of that. I mean, this is a high-level, high athletic, deep league. And you would expect, though, the champion to overcome those absences, and they nearly did on the second night of a back-to-back. Don't forget, they played the Clippers on Tuesday night. And I think that played into them coming up short. Because you look at the late execution, you look at the missed sequences here, in the final seconds, down 3, Isaiah Joe was fouled with, like half a second left? After the replay review, it was determined that his toe was on the 3-point line, so he got 2 free throws instead of the 3 that should have been there. So he makes 1, he intentionally misses the second, and the Thunder went for the tip-in, and they came out empty. So that single moment, it kind of crystallized a night of small mistakes. And, Daigneault said it plainly. We had some controllable stuff, fouls, turnovers, second chance points that really hurt us. And that sums it up. So this team is a team that prioritizes standards. And against Portland, they slipped a little bit. But, look, this is not a gloom and doom situation. Goodness gracious. They won, first 7 in a row? And so let's not turn this everything into pessimistic. Let's be clear. This is absolutely not a sign of regression. There's still a lot to talk about. The Thunder, still the front runners of the league. I am curious about what Chicago's doing, though. I got to throw that out there. I am curious about Chicago. But you got SGA, you got the reigning MVP, and should be, I know we're just like weeks into the season, but should be the leading candidate at this point for MVP. He drops 35. You know, that continuity of elite production, it just remains there. This is a team that continues to have a star who shows up game after game. And let me just remind you that this was the second night, again, of a back-to-back where a lot of teams, Clippers, they have to rest their stars in back-to-back games. SGA has not done that. And then you look at the players around him. Look at Aaron Wiggins, 27 points, 7 of 10 from three-point range. And so when injuries hit, here's another guy who just steps up. So it shows you the kind of depth that this team has, and it is championship quality depth. And you got to, I mean, how can you not? How can you not love Ajay Mitchell, right? And he's thrust into a bigger role in Portland, makes a mistake down the stretch, but this kid, the ceiling is so high. And the good news is he took ownership. Here's his quote. Obviously, a lot to learn from today. Me as a guard, I've got to take care of the ball. So he's not shying away from the moment, nor is he shying away from the accountability that comes with that moment. And that's exactly what you want to hear from the emerging pieces around your superstar, taking that ownership. So this game, I think it breeds growth within this team. You know, they have an elite core. You'll be hard-pressed to name a handful of teams who have a core as young, as elite, and as locked up as what the Thunder do. They have elite depth. They have a coherent system. And so when you look at a loss like this early in the season, it can be more beneficial than it would, sneaking into a late win. So what are the lessons, right? What does Oklahoma City need to fix after their one loss that not everybody, but some people seem to be upset about? Let's shift. Let's talk about those adjustments. Because I do think if Oklahoma City just shrugs off this loss and they move forward stronger, then they haven't. Well, I think if they shrug off the loss, there's really nothing to learn. But if they decide that we'll be stronger from this, here's a few areas I think that they got to react to. I think they've got to find balance between aggression and discipline on defense. Their identity has become this high octane defense where pressure, switching, disrupting, but that becomes chaotic, and when it does, it gets punished. So I think they have to maybe recalibrate a little bit here, playing so many role players and starting spots. Like they need to keep the fire, but control the flame, if I could say that. So what Mark Daigneault has to do, he's got to manage depth and rotation during these back-to-back stretches. And you're missing 3 important contributors, right? The wear and tear of a back-to-back showed up in this game. The Thunders, they've got to be able to manage minutes. They've got to be able to manage that load time. And they've got to find strategic rest. And that's where veteran teams win. But I think also you look at consistency outside, right? When you've got the pace and the transition that the Thunder play with, when it's humming, they are unstoppable. But when the half-court game slows, right, turnovers begin to creep in, that's when the cracks in the foundation appear. I think the guys on Thunder SI said it this way, in those games, it's about detail being better in every detail, right? So clutch details and late game execution. You got the three free throw sequence with Isaiah Joe's toe being on the line. You've got the missed tip in. You've got tiny margins that determine the outcome. And championship teams make those plays. So I'm not saying they're not a championship team. I'm saying that they have a mirror to look in to figure out what they have to do next. And I think ultimately, when you look at the bigger picture, this loss is not a setback. It's more of a signal. And you know what we like to do on the Sooner Nation podcast? I guess we'll call this segment the Thunder Nation, right? But we like to zoom out, right? We just like to zoom out and look at the big picture. And for the Thunder, this loss is less an interruption and more a signal. a sign that, if you will, like the margin for error is shrinking. But they still have elite aspirations, and those come with discipline. So you start the season at 8-0, you look great. Staying unbeaten, look like, wow, the Wonder Kids, right? But what happens when the opponent fights back? What happens when the league adapts? What happens when the real test comes? And we know this team is championship caliber. But we also know that champions are built, they're not declared. And the Thunder, they have that pedigree. They're the reigning champs, but they're also still very young. And many times young teams need reminders. And I think this one arrived in a hard way. But that's fine, because no one's going undefeated in the NBA regular season. And I think you look at, standing still, really, in this league, it's falling behind. And the league, they see Oklahoma City's core, they see their depth, and they're going to make adjustments. But losses like this can teach adaptation. And you've got a culture that you have developed in Oklahoma City. You've also got an expectation that comes with playing for the Thunder, and the culture must match the expectation. I believe it does. I believe that the Thunder market themselves as a disciplined, determined, detail-oriented team. And when that standard slips, even momentarily like it did in Portland, it becomes visible. And so your identity holds even when the schedule gets tricky. And what that means is that this just becomes a fuel type moment. Like true champions, they use losses as fuel. And the Thunder have the makeup to do just that. They can show up, they can refocus, and they can respond. And I expect that to begin on Friday. So here's where we stand on all this. The Thunder lost Wednesday, right? A game that they should have won. A game that they might have won if they checked, every detail in focus. But they didn't do that. And that's okay, because what matters now isn't the record, it's the reaction. Will they fix foul trouble? Will they stabilize their grip on defense? Will they deepen their rotation and manage the load? Will they keep that standard that we've become used to, even when, the shine of the scoreboard is not what it says it should be? That's the question that we want to look at. This is not a derailment. This is a teaching moment for a young team. Sure, they're champions, but they are a young team. And if we know anything about Oklahoma City, we know that they learn fast. So that's it for our first ever segment on the Oklahoma City Thunder. We got more Sooner talk coming right up after this.